everyone, and welcome to our session on SPEM personality. Today, it's going to be myself and Madison presenting. So I'm going to start the session, give a little bit of context, talk a little bit about the theory, maybe outline some concepts that not many of us have encountered, but talking specifically about personality drift and how people change and getting a view of what we mean by personality as well. So let me give this a share over here. Okay, we are ecosystem AI. Just to start off with, I wanted to spend a little time giving a view on what personality is, particularly within a digital context. So if we take the definition of personality, now this is not the definition as it stands in a dictionary, this is a definition as we would normally understand it. So it is defined as a consistent set of traits or emotions or behavior or attitudes that people tend to have. If we look at personality, particularly from a human perspective, it's got quite an interesting history, right? So classically, we would have defined personality, and you guys may or may not have heard about this, by 4 temperaments, which was some of the earlier definitions. And it was very much about a mind or a thinker or a psychologist or a philosopher or somebody that had an idea of how these things could possibly work that would then apply this to a set of humans and then divide us up into 4. So Galen's 4 temperaments were based on like sanguine, which is generally happy people, phlegmatic, which at the time was very much about, which tended to make people a little bit wishy-washy. And then you had your melancholic people who tended towards being sad or a little bit lonely. And then you had your choleric people, which tended towards angry or passionate. Now, we can probably all laugh at this today because it is very rudimentary, but at the time it was devised, it was quite renowned. People were very much like, okay, cool, I am sanguine or I am melancholic. As time went on, there was a rise in self-assessment studies or questionnaires where people would come in for these personality assessments and provide a view of themselves. That would then be mixed in to define from the perspective of this professional what your personality actually is. Now, as we've spoken about as ecosystem quite a lot, self-assessment studies come with a lot of its own issues because people don't always think about themselves as a long-term entire entity, so to speak. We are very much biased by the actions or interactions that have happened in a particular day or various other elements as well. Also, especially one of the points is sort of this concept of self-reflection. So we tend to answer questions based on the person we want to be and not necessarily the person that we are. But what this did, at least for human psychology and sciences, is that it provided a view that something like the 4 temperaments was not nuanced enough. There was not enough information if you could just classify someone as one of those 4 temperaments. We morphed into a greater understanding where models provided you with various measures of certain personality traits, which then define your entire personality type. And from that, there are then archetypes, as in the Myers-Briggs example, that are then derived from that. So you'll have your, I'd be lying if I got this correct, but you have your combination of INTJ or something, and that makes you an explorer. That combination could be incorrect, but you get the idea. So it's your 4 types that then determine your traits and your archetype as well. But one of the other examples we use quite a lot, that I have spoken to before, is the OCEAN model. So that's, measures of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, or alternatively known as emotional stability, that will provide you with a very unique overall view of who you are based on those metrics. Now, as time has gone along, we've had this introduction of digital analysis, and this has now, just as what self-assessment did to psychology and understanding us from the view of temperaments, so too has digital analysis now given us yet another extra view or layer of understanding on how to define an individual's personality. Now, digital behavior analysis has given us the opportunity to see that we have various different personalities based on the environments that we're in, the circumstances that we're in, and related to the organizations or the relationships that we have with specific companies, as well as personal preferences and purchasing option. Now, this has led us to define things like customer personality or spend personality or interaction digital personality, smaller slices out of the overall personality view to then get a sliver of a view of behaviors and actions, or basically the traits, attitudes, emotions that people have in a particular situation. Customer personality, talking, or at least moving away from this human personality viewpoint and very much into understanding the relationship that an entity has with a business. You as a company or a business needing to know what your customer's personality is incredibly valuable, because it gives you an understanding of more than just this person is a person. This then further allows you to make certain decisions, like knowing when to make an offer and what that offer should be, so customer personnel, customer product matching, and exactly when and how it should be presented. So this could be a particular time of day that something should be presented to an individual, or even on a particular device using certain kinds of languages. And what this ultimately does is foster loyalty, happiness, and eventually lifetime value. So just to give a bit of a background, how is digital personality identified, specifically using digital behavioral analysis? So when we talk about digital behavioral analysis, it's about identifying a certain sequence of events, clicks, interactions, or digital fingerprints, ultimately, that give you a view of individualistic behaviors. And in the context of spend personality, it is these fingerprints that allow you to then cluster by personality types that fall specifically outside of combined traits, combined actions. Now, just to give a view of the diagram that we can see here, you'll see the 4 clusters. There are a further 2, so there's also introvert and extrovert personality that could be added to this. The cluster of transactions of spend, which is what spend personality is based on, within the center there in green, is shared transactions, so shared actions. So it could be things like food or fuel, which doesn't give you a view of any particular personality type, but rather a view that this person is a person and they are, in fact, spending with you. So there are, alongside the spend personality, it's an analysis of transactions, but there's also more elements that go into understanding customer personality. So as you can see, there's segments and clusters, which are often based on geographic locations and things like customer rituals and behaviors, which lends itself to understanding personality drift. When we're talking about gaining a deeper understanding of customers' spend personality, we're not talking about an exclusion of demographics, but rather an elevation of the understanding of the individual that has those demographics. So one of the examples that could be used is, if you're only segmented by demographics, you have women that are in their 30s, the assumption is they have children. It's a very unlikely assumption at the moment because a lot more women are having children later or choosing not to. But by making that assumption based purely on those metrics, you begin to then alienate people because you're lumping them into an archaic, outdated view of who these individuals could possibly be. So now the reason we're all here is to talk about personality drift. Personality drift is not about an individual's personality change. When we talk about being the July you and the December you, we're not saying that your personality is going to fundamentally change based on a time in the year. But what we are saying is that there are various elements that can contribute to subtle shifts in personality. There are things like one of the most obvious examples is the customer life cycle. So this could be contributing factors such as getting your first job, buying a house, getting married, getting divorced even, being single, having a child. These kinds of things are all part of a life cycle, and they can oftentimes be mapped based on how one within a particular society or culture is likely to move along that spectrum. But a lot of that can be quite outdated or one size fits all. Another thing that contributes to personality drift is social rituals that present themselves as supposed anomalies. One of the great examples of social rituals is if your country is hosting a World Cup and you are not a person to watch soccer, it is very likely that you are, through the course of some kind of patriotic attitude, going to participate in this social ritual that's not normally part of your usual events. There's also unexpected events such as deaths or the like. So one of the obvious ones that's often used is age, which can contribute to personality drift. SPEN personality exists on a spectrum, but just as it works with the OCEAN model, you have a score of each of these personality metrics. It's very possible that somebody can be an enthusiastic experiential or an enthusiastic extrovert. It's a combination of those. So depending on the highest score that you have in each of these personality types, that is the personality that you tend to on the side of or closer to. And it can change. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Madison, and she's going to give us a little bit more information as to why all of this is important.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to take over the screen share and start my presentation. Everyone can see it, right? There we go. So we've just had a great overview of the theory and knowledge behind SPEN personality and personality drift. And the next step to take would be to understand, well, how can we use this and why is it important to use it? What's the value behind it? So how do you apply it? What's the practical perspective? It's important to note that there's a practical application that benefits both the customer and the organization. In this case, I'm looking at a bank. And I'm going to look at this practical application through two use cases. One would be product recommendations, offering a new product to a customer, whether it be a debit card or credit card. And the next one would be how do you encourage increased transaction volume? So how do you get your customers spending? So I'm going to look at this application through these two lenses. To start off, I want to talk about how SPEN personality can be used and applied to all phases of the customer life cycle. So whether it's at the start of discovery, where it's lead generation and you have a limited knowledge of the person that you're engaging with, you can use SPEN personality and apply it to this person. And then you can move into the next phase, which would be once they've converted engagement, you can engage them and start discovering who they are, what their SPEN personality is, and getting these little nuggets of information. And then you can onboard them through digital onboarding. And then once they've onboarded and they're now with you as a customer, you want to activate them. This is a great space where you want to start selling more products, you want to push nudges, and you just want to drive this engagement and keep them with you. Keep your customer with you at the start. And then finally, once you've moved into the space of retention, where the customer is no longer in this new to bank stage, this is the spot I want to focus on today, because it's where you can upsell and cross-sell more, see where you reduce churn, and this is where I understand that personality drifts can have a major impact on both the customer and the bank. So just the reasons I want to look at why retention matters for banks. There's both a monetary benefit and sentimental relationship value with your customer. Money makes the world go round, but it's also great to have happy customers. From a monetary perspective, lots of profit comes from your long-term customers because it's cheaper to sell more to your current customer than it is to onboard a new one. The cost to acquire requires marketing, onboarding, operational costs, all of that. Whereas with a current customer, you just keep engaging them. And second of all, once you continue engaging your customer, you get a higher lifetime value out of them, or customer lifetime value. So this is where you sell more products to them. A customer at a bank that only has one product, be it a debit card, is more likely they have a higher chance of moving to another bank to look for more products. Whereas if you're a customer with a bank that has a credit card, a debit card, and a home loan, and maybe a student loan, you're more likely to stay with that bank. So then once you have a higher customer lifetime value, you also have a higher average revenue per user, which means a customer that has more products is generating more revenue for the bank than a customer that has one product. And then finally, obviously, if your customer is more likely to stay with you, lower churn rates, and this means steady, reliable cash flow. But moving on to the monetary perspective, we're going to look at the sentimental value and the relationship value that you can get from this retention space. When you're engaging with your customer and you're talking to them, not at them, you start to build a sense of trust and loyalty. And I come from a brand background, and I'm a firm believer in these principles of brand trust and brand loyalty. And one of the first things one of my lecturers said was, just because you can't slack a couple digits onto brand loyalty and brand trust and then whack it onto a statement of financial position doesn't mean it isn't important. It matters. And what we're seeing today with digital transformation in the digital world, specifically within banking, is that it's becoming easier and cheaper to change between banks. You can jump and open up an account quite easily in a lot cheaper way if you prefer their fees or if they have better interest rates. So now that it's easier for customers to switch, what helps banks retain their customers, what helps them stay competitive is this relationship and that trust and loyalty that you have, or that your customers have with you. It acts as like a moat around the bank to protect them and keep them competitive. So the retention space is really where this personal connection is built. Now, how do you unlock revenue within this space? And as I mentioned at the start, we're going to look at two types of use cases. Number one, increasing cross-sell and upsell opportunity, recommending a new product or a new service, and also driving higher transaction volume. When I did my research for this, I found it really interesting that a lot of banks want you to spend on your virtual cards more than your actual plastic cards, because there's a lower chance of fraud. There's a lower cost when it comes to issuing a virtual card via Apple Pay or your Apple Watch, because you don't have to print the plastic and get it delivered and go through all the security measures to make sure it's delivered to the right person. And I've seen that now with my banking app. I get rewards if I tap with my virtual card. So I found that quite interesting. So if banks now want to unlock revenue through these use cases, how do they do that? You can't just have a product that's sitting there. You have to encourage your customer to take action, to take this product or to spend more. The way you typically do that is through marketing messages or communication. You can send a basic message to your customers, whether it's via the app, an SMS, email, however the bank communicates with their customer. And you can say spend more or apply for a credit card today. If you are a better copywriter, the message would be a little bit more flared, but for the sake of this presentation, it's just apply for a credit card. You can also send a message with a reward. People love incentives, so apply for a credit card and earn cash back when you spend. And the third layer could also be a rewards through partner stores. Spend at this store and get cash back, or share and get a discount. Your bank will communicate this with you. These work to some extent. These kind of general marketing messages, recommendations, and offers, it's kind of like throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks. It works, but only to a certain point. So if you really want to, first of all, see higher conversion and have effective marketing and communication strategies, you need to unlock that sentimental value, the loyalty, trust, and emotional connection. To drive the revenue and the sentimental value, the interaction needs to feel personal and relevant. How do you do that? Well, this is where spend personality comes in. You need to make the right product recommendation to the right person. You wouldn't make product recommendation to a woman who doesn't have a child and offer them as a youth bank account. You wouldn't make that recommendation, yet for some reason, banks assume that a woman in her 30s will want such a product. Right now, I'm being recommended a home loan, and I'm not necessarily looking to buy a house. So it's important to make the right product recommendation or inspire the right action. If someone's trying to save, you shouldn't necessarily be encouraging them to spend more. So that's the first layer. The second layer is with the right message. when you are communicating with the different spend personalities, the different personalities value different aspects within a message. So whether it's the tone, the style, the syntax, they place emphasis on different aspects of a message. So in the case of an industrious spender, the message should be factual, it should highlight long-term benefits, and it should be efficient. Whereas for an experiential spender, it might be something quite flashy and talk about, making memories. Different aspects of the message appeal to different spend personalities. Thirdly, you also want to make it at the right time. I was in a conversation yesterday where someone said you can have a customer who wants to buy the product that you're going to recommend, and you can recommend it in the right message and the right tone. But if it's done at the right time, they're not on their phone, they're not necessarily looking, or they see it and then they go and do something else. That's an opportunity lost. And then finally, you want to do it with a reward that truly resonates. There's no point in offering a reward for the sake of encouraging someone to take action if the reward doesn't necessarily match the person. But this is where spend personality comes in. While most banks, they rely on outdated demographic-based segmentation, which is limiting. Spend personality finds the evidence within the data and reveals real customer behavior and tells us the what, the why, and how they spend, which allows banks to act on these motivations. Through this example, anytime Jay or anyone's presented and we've gone into one of the GPTs, we always talk about customer 590 when it comes to spend personality. So today we have customer 590, and they are an industrious introvert spend personality. So the traits of the spender would be they are self-reliant, purposeful, and they value efficiency. They prefer simple, long-term financial tools that boost productivity without complexity or social friction. Now, what products would you recommend to this personality? Well, for a smart budgeting credit card that categorizes purchases and encouraging mindful habits. And then finally, a goal-based savings account. If an industrious spender values long-term savings and they want to hit certain goals, you can set labeled goals and auto transfers and categorize tracking to stay on target. So this is the type of product, and then the messaging, how you would communicate this product, is also equally important. For the savings account, the message should be structured, efficient, and practical. Organize for your future, set your savings goals that work the way you do. I mean, for the credit card example, it would be a card that works the way you think, set your limits, choose your categories, stay in control. So, and then to move on to the next kind of layer of inspiring the customer to take action would be the rewards matching. So in this case, it could be tiered cashback on things like education or home improvement. And then if you match that with a partner reward, it would be something like Udemy or Coursera. I know my bank has a partnership with Udemy. At a basic level, if you're using spend personality, and we understand that for most of the year, customer 590 from January to about October is an industrious introvert spend personality, we can now communicate with them in a way that matches who they are. And the benefit as a customer, if they made product recommendations that actually work for me, I would feel like my bank gets me, which would be really great. I'd feel like I have a relationship with them. The products feel more relevant. They're not necessarily random. And it's also not just a case of they're recommending a product that's most profitable for the bank. It's a product that actually works for me. The rewards are useful and they aren't gimmicks. And I'm more likely to act on these offers, more likely to act on future offers. And I'm also, which is so important, more likely to speak positive of my bank and recommend it. So these are all the benefits for me as a customer of the bank. If you are recommending products to your customer and they're acting on it, you've just improved your cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So that means more revenue. If they're spending more on said products, that's more non-interest income. And then finally, higher customer satisfaction means higher retention. So these are just the outcomes at a basic level of you use spend personality to communicate with your customer. But now, we need to account for personality drift, which, as Jess said, this is why we are here today. So customer 590 is an industrious introvert for most of the year. But if you live in the Southern Hemisphere, social rituals start to change towards the end of the year. Our industrious introvert spender starts to change and their behavior shifts and they begin to drift. So holiday travel kicks in. When it comes to December, most people in the Southern Hemisphere will travel home or go on holiday. They'll visit family. Social rituals take over. There's often lots of sport, whether it's a rugby match. I think the Sevens happen sometime in December. So social rituals take over. And then also it's Christmas time. So more money goes to experiences, gifts, and outings. So suddenly customer 590 is now an industrious extrovert spender. They've drifted and the bank's targeting needs to keep up with this, because what happens if you don't adapt? So if you rely on this kind of static view of your industrious introvert spender, and you start and you continue with your messaging that acts on, save, be efficient, be productive, your messaging misses the mark, because towards the end of the year, you're not really looking to be productive, you're not really looking to be efficient, you just want to have a good time, at least a little bit. So number one, the messaging misses the mark. Second, the products don't necessarily match the customer's needs. So if you are looking to enjoy your December end of year you're away, you're traveling, you're not necessarily trying to save. So what can happen is customers can tune it out. If you see messages that don't necessarily resonate with you, or someone's offering you a product that you don't really need, you just ignore it, or worse, you get annoyed. If I'm trying to enjoy myself and my bank keeps saying, oh, you've missed your savings goal, you've missed your savings goal, I would not be particularly happy. In terms of the result for the bank, this is wasted marketing spend. You've missed an upsell or a cross-sell opportunity, because while you know that this industrious spender may value an investment account, and you make that recommendation and it doesn't work, the customer doesn't act on it, it doesn't necessarily mean that the customer isn't interested in another product. So you've missed the opportunity to maybe recommend a credit card. Again, you lose trust and engagement with your bank. You're not really interested, and you're not engaging with them the way you usually would. So smart banks adapt in real time, matching offers to shifting goals, moods, and mindsets. So how would this look now for customer 590 who come the end of the year is an industrious extrovert spend personality? They value structure and productivity, but they're still increasingly drawn to purposeful experiences, and they seek growth through travel, learning, or events that offer long-term meaning. Come December, when you're spending time with your family, these events offer meaning. You want to be out doing things with them. So what products would you recommend? Well, number one, a lifestyle credit card with dynamic rewards category. So this can offer both the control and flexibility. You aren't necessarily stuck in one box. The person, customer 590, is still an industrious introvert at heart, and that's who they are for most of the time. So you can still match who they are by offering something with the kind of sense of control and productivity, but you can now also tailor it to this bit of drift in the sense that they are now extrovert, and you add in the flexibility and you appeal to experiences and flexibility. So yeah, that would be the type of product that you could offer. In the case of the industrious introvert, they're most likely planning ahead. So you're not necessarily booking your flight or your accommodation and travel in December, because that's incredibly expensive. So you would do that come maybe October or November. And then you don't necessarily have the capital to do it straight away. You only get your Christmas bonus at the end of the year. So this is a great time to offer something like a credit card, where they can spend the cash that they don't have right now, but they know they will get later. And then in this case, you have the product recommendations. How do you communicate it, and what messaging way? You want something that's empowering, personal, and aspirational, not necessarily flashy, but you still appeal to this extrovert side, which is earn more on the experiences that fuel your growth. And then finally, rewards matching and partner stores. Get cashbacks for experience-based spend, which would be travel, events, but still education if you're appealing to the industrious side of the person. Partner rewards would be, again, travel and transport. So whether it's with a specific airline, my bank has a partnership with Airlit, or via booking.com or Airbnb. So this is how you would then communicate with your customer 590 who has drifted and is now an industrious extrovert spend personality. So how do we configure spend personality on the ecosystem AI prediction platform? So you can create both static and dynamic models, and these are obviously powered by the behavioral AI, real-time interaction data, and experimentation. So number one, you would connect transactional engagement and contextual data, and then would run the spend personality algorithm for existing customers. The algorithm works best for existing customers, and then you would score on known data and customer transactions, and this is where you would get whether they are intentional, industrious, experiential, enthusiastic, introvert, or extrovert. And then you would also use the spend personality for new models. So you would score on a pre-trained model to assign a score. And then finally, you would have the spend personality dynamic model for all customers. And I want to draw attention to this point, because it's the static model that essentially tells us that customer 590 is an industrious introvert spender for most of the year. But it's the dynamic model that then accounts for how they drift based on social rituals and life changes. So now, to view this personalization in action, you can view spend personality data on a per customer basis using the accompanying dashboards, whether it's Grafana or an in-Workbench view data view. And then you can use the generative capabilities to write various messages for the spend personalities. I use our very own custom GPTs to draft the spend personality messages for this exact presentation. And then finally, you can configure recommendation systems so they deliver the offers, the messages, and the product matches. And then you can also configure dynamic experiments. So this is where you test which offers work best based on how the personality is changing. And then you would continuously deploy these in real time with tailored recommendations based on current behavior. And a feature that I also really want to draw attention to, flipping brilliant, was this time-based targeting, that you can set calendar configurations to trigger recommendations during key moments. So like I said, come December, most people within the Southern Hemisphere are traveling and they're having fun and they're out doing things with family and enjoying time on holiday. So November or October is probably a great time to start triggering different product recommendations to the different spend personalities. As I mentioned, maybe it would be a credit card, or if someone's trying to save for Christmas, it would be a savings account. And you could trigger that, you could set it so that it's configured to trigger a couple months before the actual ritual happens and takes place, or the change in the personality drift takes place. So that's how you would do it. We've always got to talk about the results and the impact. And obviously, I think some of them are pretty clear. So number one, there's an improved cross-sell and upsell opportunities. You've reduced your marketing waste. I think there's nothing worse than the idea that marketing, you just throw mud at a wall and see what sticks. It's about personalization now, and personalization isn't just hello Madison and then a generic message. It's matching the right product to the right customer at the right time with the right message. So we obviously see a higher average revenue per user. If I am being recommended a credit card when it's most likely to benefit me and I'm going to act on that, I've now opened up 2 products with my bank, and maybe I'll open up a third, which would be a savings account. Start gaining more from your customer and they start buying more from you. So then you increase your customer lifetime value, and these smarter recommendations are driven by real behavior. It's the evidence within the data that's so important. And it's not just assumption that a woman is 30, she must have a child. Those assumptions don't really get anyone anywhere.
Have we lost Madison?
No, I think, yeah, she's frozen on my side too.
We can give her a minute.
Sorry,
we lost you there for a minute.
Am I back?
Yeah, you are. You're back now. We lost you there for a minute.
Okay, where did you lose me?
You were talking about where you got to the customer lifetime value.
Oh, all the way there. Oh, sorry. Essentially, these smarter recommendations are driven by real behavior and not just the spend personality accounts for the evidence within the data. It's not just an assumption that, as Jess mentioned, a woman is 30, she must have a child by now. Let's start making these product recommendations. It's the evidence of this person spends this way. This is what they spend their money on. Let's see their spend personality and then make offers that actually match this personality. From relevant, timely offers. The communication feels personal, it's not generic, and the products align with life moments and goals. I think what's so important about this space here, where the products align with the life moments and goals, is that your bank starts to feel like a partner that's kind of moving with you as your life changes, whether it's, like Jess was saying, you're buying a house, you're getting married, you're starting a family, you're even getting divorced. Your bank becomes this partner that works with you, and they make the product recommendations that you can actually benefit from. It's not just about them extracting value from you. And that creates the sense that the bank understands and supports you as a customer. You're not just someone to extract customer lifetime value and get more revenue from. So that's the kind of relationship view and the business impact of how banks can benefit from accounting for personality drift. So that's the practical application and use case. Thank you so much. I know we have some time now for any questions or comments.
I think we must have presented too well. No question. Everybody knows exactly what it's all about.
I'm just trying to find, where do I put my hand up? Must I put my hand up? It's Mo, ladies. Madison,
no,
just presentation of the persona type. I love it. And, you know, Billy, who met you in January, was just saying how far it's all come for all of you. You know, amazing. We're actually grappling with something here. We have a client who deals only with insurance, short-term insurance companies, right? Like your First for Women or your Outsurance. They do all the premium collections for insurance clients. So my question, and maybe you're going to have to bump it up to Jay to chip in here, I don't know, but maybe would you have a persona for finance or a money persona, and then underneath that a saving and a spending persona? Do you think it's conceivable that one could create a short-term insurance persona? In other words, I have, you know, us elderly people, we are a lower risk, probably you can bank on us paying our premium, whereas a younger driver, maybe a higher risk, he misses a beat on his premium payment and so forth. So would one be able to create a spectrum of short-term personas? And how would one, you know, deliver benefit to an insurer with that insight and knowledge on the insureds that they have? A big challenge for our client is premium collection, right? Making sure that the premium is collected every month Insurance is quite technical because if the premium fails, the cover drops. So if they run a debit order for your premium and it fails and you have an accident the next night, they may not cover you. The consequences are quite severe. We've been brainstorming whether one would be able to create a value-delivering persona for short-term insurers combined with your collection probability on someone to better manage the risk of payment failure. Am I trying to jam too much into a single problem here, Jay? Or do you think it's conceivable that we can do something like that? Thank you.
But I think you kind of need to think about two dimensions in any algorithm design approach where I think you need behavior as a basis. So one is there something specific and unique to the situation that the person is in when they engage with that service or product? You will go through an algorithm design process, and maybe Jess can share some design slide approach. We've got a framework that we've used before to design personalities that are quite specific to certain situations. If you think of the money personality or the spend personality or sentimental equilibrium, all of those are quite unique to a specific industry or situation. There is another dimension though, and the other dimension is that there are certain generic things companies do, if they are service companies, that are transportable between different industries and different situations. And that's why we create that 4-pillar system. You got the way in which you speak to people when they know nothing about you, and then making them aware of what you're doing. There are some things there that are quite generic, that you can use any of the behavioral capabilities that we've created so far deployed out of the box. But when you get to a customer that has signed up and you want to capture the value across all of what you have to offer, then you probably will end up creating an archetypal system for your specific industry or company. And we've done it for companies before, typically too. If I want to activate somebody, let's say I've sold somebody a short-term insurance policy, and it looks like, based on evidence they've provided, that they might have more than one vehicle, or they might have a home, might have other assets that I want to insure, and I see that they only have one item with me, what can I do to cross-sell, upsell, activate, remind? So there are many situations that you can do without needing a behavioral model for your industry. It's purely applying the algorithms we created. By the time the customer has gone through the NTB, the new to business, or an insurance, particularly after the first payment period or the first period, by the time you are allowed to claim, depending on if it's medical insurance, sometimes you have to be with a fund for 6 months before you can claim, then behaviors change quite significantly. And that is what it comes back to, like I was saying earlier, you old fogies might pay your bills more often, but you also claim differently. Yeah, your accidents are way bigger than the small ones or than the young ones. If you then want to collect, the active collection, and we've done a bunch of different collections projects before. And the thing about collections is if you apply, let's say, a basic human construct like FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, your campaigning might start that you first want to create doubt that the person is going to get themselves into trouble, create uncertainty that if they do not, something will get back to you, that something will happen, and then the fear is effectively what will happen if they definitely do not have cover. So you can create an entire human graph that will help you to figure out how you design the messagings in the campaign. Actually, Jess can talk to some of that too. She was intimately involved in creating messages and journeys for debt collection and debt management and the like. So I think that there are kind of two dimensions. And I think the one, to get going out of the box, you can take what we have. And on the other dimension, you can then calibrate what is unique to the business over time once you've created some interventions. Because you're going to find that personality in the personality drift happens because you are intervening. You are getting a person to make a different decision that they would have made without you being present. Yeah.
Sorry, Myers, go for it.
No, just thank you. It was great to, Billy.
Yeah, I just got one question that, in my experience on the insurance, short-term insurance, a lot of them is mentioned on LSM groups, the female on top of insurance, legal, car, medical, whatever.
Yes.
Does that also play a big role in your algorithm?
Definitely. The model will converge any attributes that deal with the human organism. So the human organism is if you think about it, how a human conduct itself in the context of its financial world and end of its life, we've created a wheel that we've used to decide what the various financial dimensions, making money, saving money, protecting money, or protecting your assets, means there's a ratio between that and the rest of what you do. All of those elements normally will form part, especially the data point like the person's age, their historical behaviors. You might even take their behavior of how they have altered the benefits on their policy or how they've claimed historically, as we'll include those in the analytic, without a doubt.
Thank you, Jay.
Jessica, the part where you worked on collections is something we'd be very keen to explore with you. Maybe if not in this session, then Billy and I will set up a separate session, because one of our clients is a big business process outsourcing component where they actually do collections on behalf of third parties. So it would be great to sort of, if you could rub up some of that expertise of yours so we can charm them with a proposal.
No, absolutely. Definitely be up for that. I sadly don't have any slides to present based on that, but definitely be happy to talk to it.
We'll pick your brain in due course. Thanks, Jess. Thank you, Jay.
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Yes, Tabella.
Hello. I just want to know, so when you are now doing this analysis, right, and you're looking at these different personalities, are you going and saying, okay, you as customer, whoever is interested in applying this, do you have an existing model and we are superimposing this model on top? Or are you saying, okay, we're looking at your data from all of your customers and then we're trying to make a relationship from there, from scratch? I just wanted to know, once you, basically, are you basing the profiling, best as I could say, basically, are you saying you're looking at an existing model from your customer, or are you looking purely at the data from your customers, whether it's transactional data or other data that you've collected, and saying, okay, this is the model I'm building and this is the personality the customer would best fit?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it, Jay.
I was just going to say that if you think of behavioral economics or computational social science, that is one of our primary disciplines, it means that there are certain human behaviors that the data points you're going to extract from your data will be interpreted in the context of a human behavior, like Jason Madison was, the way that they were explaining it earlier. And then there's the second part that you would then find evidence that typically has a time series component to it. So that means that is there a way that you can get interactions or some kind of data points where you have collected how humans have engaged with you over time.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens often, if you think about, even if somebody changed their domicile quite frequently, or they change their marital status or their number of children, you want to understand the movement in time, and then the time difference or high velocity interactions, like somebody having to make a payment or somebody withdrawing cash or somebody signing a contract or whatever the element is that can create an anchor in time. All those data points are used to calibrate the model. But our model typically is a real world definition of the biological system called a human in its environment. Okay. And then we find data to map it so that we can create a construct of behavior. Jesse, you want to describe a bit more?
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. It's about having a template based on human behavioral understanding, about all of these algorithms are designed on an understanding of cultural elements or common patterns of transactional clusters, that kind of thing. But it is very much tuned to the specific company in implementing that, because, an extrovert, as we painted very generally, means they, like the color red, and if you use exclamation marks, but there are subtle nuances within that where an extrovert within a particular company would have a slightly different response to those particular metrics.
Okay, understood. That makes sense.
We are coming up to 2 minutes to the end, so if there are no more questions, I think we can close off the session. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Goodbye.